Good evening, and welcome to the 184th Convocation celebration of the Williston Northampton School. As we gather tonight for this formal event, it is worthwhile to reflect on why we do so. Convocation marks the ceremonial opening of the school and is part of our long and notable history. And though it may seem like a lifetime away, Convocation is mirrored by the ceremonial closing of the school, which occurs at our baccalaureate ceremony the evening before commencement. These twin events at the opening and closing of the school year call upon us to honor the mission of our school, both in words and deeds, as we strive to live with purpose, passion, and integrity. So as we begin our ceremony tonight, we pause and reflect on our history. As you know, the Williston Northampton School takes its name from two schools that merged in 1971, the Williston Academy and the Northampton School for Girls. The Angelus was presented to the Northampton School for Girls by their student council in 1952. It fast became the beating heart of the campus and is now permanently installed on the lawn of our residential quad. On the Angelus is inscribed the words, "For quiet thought." Originally, it was sounded each afternoon as the young women of the Northampton School for Girls, along with their teachers, paused for a minute of silent reflection. Today, we ring the Angelus at the opening and closing of each school year. As an institution devoted to seeking global engagement through critical consideration of academic thought, we can all appreciate the sentiments embraced by countless numbers of our alumni who have been stirred by the reverberation of this joyful bell. As we now sound the Angelus, I invite you to join me in a few moments of quiet thought. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Williston. Welcome, students and faculty, guests, those watching online. As Mr. Korokowski said, to the school's 184th Convocation. Convocation, as he said, marks the official start of an academic year, and it is a formal tradition that dates back hundreds of years to the first universities in England and in Europe. Literally, and I defer to our Latin experts, Mrs. Hill and Ms. Cody, the word convocation means calling together. Speaking of Mrs. Hill, each fall the opening of school conflicts with her special day, and that actually happens to be today, so happy birthday, Mrs. Hill. As we gather all students and faculty on this beautiful Williston afternoon, we also welcome our special guest, Christina DeJosa, class of 2010, who generously traveled up from New York City to share remarks with you later in the program. I'll introduce her at that point. You've all heard me say this year that there's magic that happens every fall as we come together, not just to reunite, but to reimagine the school and to reform into one community that is uniquely Williston. Just the other day at registration, a parent came up to me and said that Williston is a place that does what the brochure says. And they were talking about how teachers and coaches and advisors make a point of connecting and building important mentoring relationships. The adults in your Williston lives spin those first slender threads which later form and intricate web of connectivity as the weeks go by. Students, you should not take them for granted, and you should give them your best in all the things that you do. You students out here, you come from Germany and Thailand, California and Maine, Longmeadow and Amherst, and all the places in between. And every year, because of you, Williston takes on a slightly different tone. Like the many hues of fall foliage that will transform this campus as they do every October, no 2 years are the same, and each class will take on its own character as the trimester unfolds. If the opening days are any indication, the class of 2025, all 145 of you, is ready to lead by example with unmatched energy, talent, and enthusiasm. Shout out 2025. So I've been thinking about the underlying reasons we are such a unique community and why it is that I can make this claim. Here's what I think. The guidelines and policies and practices that you've learned about in these opening days of orientation and dorm meetings are just words on a page. Without your buy-in and participation or willingness to engage, none of us are at our best. Our success in realizing this special community, what you heard me call Williston Nice, depends entirely upon you. Will you say hello to one another on the paths, wave to motorists when they stop for you, help your roommate or friend in a time of need? Each of us here today has chosen Williston. You may have your own personal reasons and goals for doing so, but here we are, ready to begin or continue our Williston journey. What unites us then is our quest to fulfill those goals and ambitions, while being faithful all the while to Williston's values of respect, trust, and honesty. There's an alumna that most everyone by now knows of who graduated from Williston in 2012, Gabby Thomas. In one of the many interviews on national television following her triple gold medal performance in Paris, she was asked, what advice would you give to kids hoping to emulate you? Gabby said, in case you didn't see the Today Show interview, her words boiled down to, quote, working hard and giving back to your community, unquote. That's what she did for 6 years at Williston, and gold medals or not, she said, she will always adhere to that model instilled in her by her mother. Giving back to your community, to this Williston community, happens every day in large and small ways, in both calculated and spontaneous gestures. In fact, I would say we just witnessed that this afternoon in assembly when dozens of your classmates exercised bravery and shared their stories with us. That was one first sure sign of this. I look at the world today, especially for you seniors who will be launching out before you know it, and I see challenges everywhere. Your Williston education, your commitment to shaping community and to giving back, your ability to harness the powers of purpose, passion, and integrity are what best prepare you for your long and unscripted futures. In the year ahead, please strive to be critical thinkers, to discover truths that apply to the common good, and try to listen and learn from one another. It's too easy to disengage from difficult moments or topics, but growth lies in engaging, in being active learners. It's easy to be governed by your social media feeds, which influence or maybe even brainwash you without you being aware of it. It takes effort and work to find disparate sources of information and to apply your critical thinking skills to see fundamental truths. You get to choose. Every day, you make choices to engage, to act, to volunteer. Some of you have demonstrated that already during orientation and first classes and sports and dorm activities. Anyone can take the easy road and opt out, stand by and disengage. So let me leave you with this question for the 2024-2025 academic year. Do you want to be an anybody or do you want to be a somebody? Thank you for listening, and now it's my great pleasure to introduce Senior Class President Isabel Baxter Paris to share her remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Good evening, Williston faculty, members of the Board of Trustees, fellow students, and especially to the exceptional class of 2025. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak today. I also want to thank the staff of Physical Plant and Sage Dining, without whom this event and everything we do at Williston would not be possible. First, I want to welcome all of our new students and faculty. We are so lucky to have you here, and you are so fortunate to have joined a community like Williston. I think that oftentimes convocation speeches focus solely on the future and what we hope to accomplish and celebrate as we usher in the upcoming academic year. I would like to take a moment to reflect on Williston's storied past and share with you how I believe it can guide and impact the year ahead. This year, we commemorate a momentous milestone in our school's history, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Northampton School for Girls. As many of you already know, Williston Academy was an all-boys school until 1971, when we merged with the Northampton School for Girls to become the Williston Northampton School. Of course, we are now a thriving coeducational institution, but I believe that all students, regardless of gender, can learn valuable lessons from our predecessors at the Northampton School for Girls. A century ago, Sarah Whitaker and Dorothy Bement established the school, which dared to prepare young women for higher education, and even the workforce. Many women's schools during this period primarily functioned as finishing schools, but Whitaker and Bement were determined to provide their students with an education that rivaled, and, dare I say, exceeded, that of all-boys schools like Williston Academy. Revolutionary during their time, when women's education was mainly focused on typing and home economics, not intellectual rigor, the students at the Northampton School for Girls rose to meet every challenge. For example, seniors completed summer reading assignments that often exceeded 30 books. So those of you who haven't started your summer work would have been in serious trouble. Like today's Williston students, the women at the Northampton School for Girls were not solely focused on academics. Whitaker and Bement instilled in their students a strong sense of social responsibility. During the Great Depression, Sarah Whitaker worked without pay, waiving tuition fees for countless families to ensure that cost was never a barrier to receiving an outstanding education. During World War II, worker shortages on local farms created a need for additional potato farmers. Northampton schoolgirls answered the call and woke up at dawn each morning to harvest potatoes and asparagus before arriving to English class. After the war, the school raised funds for a French town that had been decimated by the German occupation, and Bement was even awarded a medal from the French government for her efforts. Not only did Miss Whitaker and Miss Bement offer generations of students access to a higher quality education, they encouraged them to take action beyond their school community and go on to impact the world in ways their mothers and grandmothers never could have imagined. I know a little something about strong women. My great-grandmother was a nurse at a local women's college who, in the 1960s, stopped at nothing to ensure her patients had access to reproductive health care. My mother planted me on a street corner when I was 5 years old and told me to hold a campaign sign for a US Senate candidate. She wanted me to understand that anyone, at any age, had the power to have their voice heard and impact their community. When I first started at Williston, I was immediately inspired by Ms. Cody's infectious passion for the Roman world and unconditional support of all of her students. Throughout my time in the upper school, I have marveled at my advisor, Ms. Fogg's, leadership of our inspiring faculty, and of her unrelenting advocacy on behalf of each and every member of our advisory. As I think about the legacy of women's education in this country, it is remarkable to recognize how far we have come. It is possible that in this momentous year, a century after the founding of the Northampton School for Girls, a woman could finally shatter the highest, hardest glass ceiling and potentially assume the presidency of the United States. The Northampton School for Girls merged with Williston Academy in 1971, and we retained much more than just the name Northampton. We kept the Angelus, the bell on the residential quad, which you heard at the beginning of this ceremony, and thanks to Ms. Cody, is still rung every Friday afternoon, allowing us to pause for a moment of quiet reflection. Embracing the spirit of our coeducational community, donations from Northampton School for Girls alumni enable students of all genders and backgrounds to attend Williston. We still award a white blazer at commencement to honor the student who best exemplifies the values personified by Whitaker and Bement. And, most importantly, we continue to encourage the joint pursuit of excellence and social action. I can think of no one who has lived up to these two ideals more than our inspiring alumna, Gabby Thomas. Obviously, Gabby is an exceptional athlete. She now holds 5 Olympic medals to prove it. But although she might be known around the world for her athletic prowess, she is revered in her local community for volunteering at a free clinic. Most evenings, after grueling hours of training, Gabby devotes her time to serving some of the countless Americans who live without health insurance. Although she was not awarded a gold medal for these contributions, Gabby's impact can be measured by the life-changing kindness and assistance that she has shown, and by her contributions to eradicating disparities in the American healthcare system. While at Williston, Gabby was the exemplary student athlete. I'm sure that some of you will go on to reach similar accomplishments in athletic achievement and community impact, and I hope that when you do, you will accept Mr. Hill's invitation to come back here and speak at commencement or convocation, not just because we all want another photo with an Olympic gold medal. This year, I challenge all of you to channel the spirit of Sarah Whitaker and Dorothy Bement. Balance the pursuit of excellence with kindness and engagement in our school community. What will our impact be on one another, on the world that lies ahead of us? Will you help a middle schooler find their classroom in the chapel? Will you welcome a new student into your dance circle tonight? Will you offer to babysit a faculty kid? Help your friend with Mr. Berghoff's chem homework. They'll definitely need it. Show up to every Thirds basketball game or cheer on your classmates in the winter musical. This year, I hope you will take inspiration from Sarah, Dorothy, and Gabby Thomas and be a conscientious citizen of your home in the Pioneer Valley. Take the time to volunteer with the Community Service Club at the Ronald McDonald House, sing in the annual East Hampton Whoville celebration, and donate warm clothes to those in need at the Winter Warmer concert. Class of 2025, if you model this behavior, I promise underclassmen will follow. In 8 short months, we will gather again on this lawn, and you will all embark on the next chapter of your lives. What do you want your legacy to be on this campus? Regardless of your gender, I hope you will always carry with you the spirit and ideals of Dorothy and Sarah, and that you will harness the power of your Williston education to become an engaged and impactful citizen of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isabel. That was incredibly researched and incredibly woven together. We really appreciate those words. It's a pleasure now for me to introduce Dean of Faculty, Corey Fogg, for presentation of awards.
Thank you. Good evening, Williston. The presentation of faculty awards is one of the great honors of serving in this role at the school. Amidst the multitude of feelings that swirl within us as we begin a new year, I find myself searching for tenets of hope, impact, and discovery as we launch the year. I imagine that all teachers across the globe seek hope and novelty in each new school year. We have indeed chosen the greatest profession, one of purpose and weight. As educators, through each one of you, we try to make an impact on the world, to set you forth on a journey to care for the greater good, to discover new theorems, cures, art forms, landscapes, and to cultivate your own voice. We want you to live engaged lives, and we have the honor as teachers to usher forward that work that your families started within you through our daily impact. I contend that we are still living in an age of discovery and exploration within our school community. From the sea to the stars, in your text and table conversations with teachers, you have, as students, have much to discover still. Mystery and impact are alive, possible, and well. The task for you as students is to tap into this phenomenal group of adults and to learn. I wish to take this moment to recognize the faculty who currently hold the honor of chairs or instructorships, and I ask that they stand. We will recognize the group once all these names have been called. The David H. and Edward J. Goodman Science Chair, Mr. Ken Chu. The Charles Gardner Granis and Eugenie William Granis Faculty Chair, Mrs. Carla Schaefer. the Henry M. and Judith M. Zaks Faculty Chair, Mr. Matt Leibowitz. The Richard C. Gregory Faculty Chair, Ms. Sarah Levine. The George E. Gregory and Catherine B. Gregory Instructorship, Ms. Wendy Staples. The Karen O'Neill Instructorship, Mr. Michael Melu. The Emily N. McFadden Vincent and Bob E. Vincent Instructorship, Mrs. Darla Kakatska. And the Sandra B. and Joseph C. Messick's Instructorship, Ms. Tyla Taylor. Please join me in congratulating all of these faculty at once. It is my pleasure to now announce the Faculty Awards for 2024. The Dennis H. Grubbs Faculty Chair was established in 1999 by trustees and friends of the school in honor of Denny Grubbs in his final year as headmaster. It is awarded to a faculty member whose life has been dedicated to Williston, Northampton, and to teaching. To dedicate one's life to something entirely is quite a marvel. It's a hallmark of several luminaries who have graced the Williston community over its years. This year's recipient of the Grubbs Faculty Chair has certainly dedicated a lifetime to this school and its students, earnestly having joined the community on September 1st, 1986. A master of puns and buns, well, technically chocolate chip cookies, but I went for the rhyme, she can bake enough cookies to feed the residential quad while also reminding us that parallel lines have so much in common, it's a shame they'll never meet. Indeed, we would be hard-pressed to find an alum who doesn't have a memory of our beloved Mrs. King. She is the kind of teacher students remember for a lifetime. Ellen Messer-Bowman, class of 2007, reflected on Mrs. King as her middle school math teacher, sharing that she fueled a lifelong desire to learn and explore, spanning all the way through my college years and into my career. Ellen continued, "One of the most impactful pieces of advice that Mrs. King gave me was, do it like a worksheet." As someone with a type A personality and a tendency towards perfectionism, this phrase really stuck with me. It helped me push through times when I'd get stuck trying to make things perfect or when I felt overwhelmed by a challenge. The mindset has been invaluable in guiding my decision-making, as well as building a collaborative problem-solving culture within my teams. Jen Fulcher, head of middle school, offered that with unwavering dedication, Mrs. King blends high expectations with genuine care, ensuring that every student is seen for who they are and gets the support and challenge that they need. A passionate teacher who is still looking to improve her craft, Mrs. King never loses her passion. From kids who love math to those who've always feared it, she creates a classroom where everyone thrives. But beyond the numbers, she instills in her students a belief in their own potential, teaching them that with hard work and commitment, anything is possible. Mrs. Poland furthered this, sharing with me that Mrs. King literally taught her how to teach, for Mrs. Poland covered her sabbatical as her first job at Williston. She says, "Before she left, I had the privilege to observe her classes for half the year. Simply put, Mimi is magical. She understands that building students' confidence in their math ability is just as important as building that ability. Mrs. King is kind, patient, and sincere in her life's work of teaching. Hers is a life well lived at Williston. In recognition of that life, dedicated to teaching and to Williston, Northampton, it is my pleasure to announce the Grubbs Faculty Chair recipient, Mrs. Mimi King. The Hagedorn Family Faculty Chair was established in 2006 by Robert Hagedorn, 76, and his wife, Melody, parents of Gregory, class of 2006. To know this educator is to come into the presence of a devoted scholar, although to call them as such would be met with an immediate dismissal of such laudation. Nonetheless, her dedication to craft and community is unmatched. Called a source of positive support for all, encouraging students when they feel down and being the first to offer coverage when colleagues are out, this faculty member is one of the most can-do colleagues at Williston. Extra help? Yes. Teaching another class? Yes. Of this faculty member, Kim Poland notes that her instinct is to take personal responsibility for the problems she sees in front of her, a rare quality. She is intensely committed to her students' success and possesses an intellectual curiosity which rubs off on her students in many positive ways. She epitomizes the warm demander. Her standards are high, but her support is nearly infinite. With a master's in education studying the math experience, high school to college, she practices what she teaches. Having graduated summa cum laude with majors in both mathematics and classical languages while earning Phi Beta Kappa, Mrs. Hill has distinguished herself proudly among Yale alums. This is the steady teacher and colleague and scholar that we see. Now, I asked Robbie Hill, class of 2019, to share his thoughts on her honor, and he offered. In the evenings, my mother's soundtrack is an array of ringtones, each with its own tenor. The first chime comes from the washing machine, the site of Catherine Hill's second job. And if I've learned one thing in our 23 years as mother and son, it is that nothing, no family dinner, airplane departure, or youth soccer kickoff will supplant the primacy of the next load. The second ringtone is the chirp of the Duolingo owl, marking the end of a Spanish lesson, which has become my mom's fixation, or shall I say, fixación, for the past 2 years. But the main theme of my mom's symphony, is not the washing machine or that ridiculous owl, but the doorbell, which flocks of students use on their pilgrimage to extra help. My mother is many things: a neurotic clothes washer, an intellectual titan, but above all else, she is a teacher, or magister in her second language of Latin. For almost 35 years, she's taught one of the school's most thankless subjects, math, and she has turned it into an art form. She embodies service to her students, to Williston, and to the sacred art of teaching. And there is no one more deserving of this recognition. With that, and perhaps adding to the cacophony of sounds surrounding the Hill home, I ask that you join me in announcing on her birthday the Hagedorn Family Chair recipient, Mrs. Catherine Hill. Northampton School for Girls Instructorship was established in 1999 by alumni of Northampton School for Girls to note the importance of that school in their lives and to support the focus on the education of young women that remains a part of the commitment to the merged schools. Education is a serious art. It's not for the faint of heart. As mentioned earlier, it is indeed our calling as faculty to help you in your formation and to shape impact on a future still yet unknown to us. This charge is one that we take to heart. Adding to this, to be called a true middle school educator is to take up the mantle of pre-adolescence, to tackle the chemical tumult of preteens, and to share in the pivotal transition into high school. This too requires a seriousness of purpose. Our honoree for the 2024 Northampton School for Girls instructorship is possessing of these qualities. But, if I'm being honest, she holds them in conjunction with zeal, humor, effervescence, outstanding footwear, and a side of hip-hop from the early 2000s. When we drew her away from WMA in 2022, I was certain that Williston had gained a masterful middle school teacher, a hometown heroine, and an all-around guiding light of a gal. Her students remark that she is a firecracker of a teacher and dorm parent, with a keen sense of what it is to be a teenager. Of note, her students speak to, quote, her ability to help them learn to write without pressure, of her natural way of speaking to them and understanding the whole picture of what they are going through. In a year when we commemorate a momentous milestone in our school's history, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Northampton School for Girls, Ms. Rohan holds a cellular understanding of what young women, and all teens, need in a role model and a teacher. English Department Chair Matt Leibowitz shared, "It's a remarkable experience to see Jess in action. She's truly in her element, full of excitement, goofy and fun and honest and sincere, and all while celebrating student achievement and encouraging kids to see themselves as writers, readers, and thinkers, as the writers, readers, and thinkers she already knows them to be." In one of Ms. Rohan's favorite texts, The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, the author explores precepts key to Ms. Rohan: ambition, love, resilience. Perhaps, as she accepts this honor, she will be inspired still by Follett's words. But you must live with a purpose, to build, to create, to make something. That is what makes life worthwhile. In recognition of her life of purpose and the spirit of Northampton School for Girls alums, it is my pleasure to announce that the Northampton School for Girls instructorship is awarded to Ms. Jess Rohan. One of the special traditions at Convocation is honoring faculty who have committed 25 years of their lives to Williston by presenting them with a Williston chair. This year, we honor one outstanding member of the faculty. Sarah Sawyer joined the Williston community in 2000 with an extensive array of academic accomplishments behind her. A graduate of Breadloaf School of English with coursework in 16th century lyric poetry, Victorian poetry, Ovid, and the Bible, she has made her life's work the celebration of writing. Before that time, she graduated magna cum laude with special distinction in English from Amherst College, having spent a spring semester in Rome studying Italian art, language, and literature. Founding the Williston Writing Center, ushering forward countless visiting writers to our campus, and pioneering early Williston Scholars classes, Mrs. Sawyer led the elevation of student voice and written expression on our campus. In her time at Williston, she put pen to paper, publishing her first novel this year, The Undercurrent. The waters that shape her life flow throughout this campus and surround myriad alums who hold her in the highest esteem. Mrs. Sawyer has made Williston her home, raising her 2 children on campus, and she is a consummate, exceptional teacher. In her time here, she has served as a coach, mentor, dorm parent, writer, member of the Cum Laude Society, and English teacher. In 2008, she was awarded the Sandra B. and Joseph C. Messiff Instructorship and in 2016, she was awarded the Henry M. and Judith M. Zaks Faculty Chair. Please join me in congratulating Sarah Sawyer on 25 years of service to Williston.
It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Christina DiGiosa is a New York Times award-winning writer and audio producer who has covered an incredible array of topics, including gay referees in Brazil, inclusivity in national parks, and beached whale dissection, just to name a few. After graduating from Williston, Christina earned her BA from the George Washington University in International Development and Japanese Language and Culture, and she also studied abroad at Waseda University in Japan. Recently, she made the switch to produce the hugely popular Modern Love podcast, which is about to debut, I believe. So you can all get some advice after this from her on any issues about modern love. We're so grateful to her for returning to her alma mater to be with us as we celebrate the start of the year. So please give a warm Williston welcome home to Christina.
All right, let's just get this one thing out the way. High school is a little wild. And by a little wild, I mean it's like being in a game where the rules change every week. And here you are, whether you're a freshman or a senior, just trying to figure out where your first class is or where you fit in this year. And look, I've been there too. Because I remember when I first started at Williston, I didn't know how to use my mailbox for the first month. I kept waiting for the opportunity to unlock it when no one was looking. And then early one morning, on a Saturday, I went to the Reed Center and stood there and still did not get my mailbox open like 4 times. Even when the 5th time worked, I ran away with my mail because I didn't want to find out if anyone had seen me failing at something so simple. And if you think moments like that end after your freshman year, think again, because I remember my junior year, someone asked me to watch the horror movie Saw. I didn't want to admit that I hadn't seen it, and I basically hadn't seen any horror movies in my life. So I was like, oh yeah, I love Saw, I've seen them all. Then a few days later, my friends were marathoning the Saw movies in the common room, and I had to pretend I was super into it, when I was secretly dying inside because it was my first actual horror movie. So there were tons of times it felt like everyone else had it together and I was just trying to keep up. But here's the thing. Everyone, and I mean everyone, feels like they're failing at the Williston game sometimes. So if you're sitting at the stew bop feeling like, am I doing this right? The answer is yes, because Williston is all about figuring out things as you go. Everyone around you is simultaneously trying to blend in and stand out like, yes, I want to be noticed, but not like that. But here's the thing. Who you are right now might not be who you are tomorrow. And that's okay. I used to think that I had to figure out who I was by the end of Williston, like there was some kind of deadline. And there is no deadline. You're allowed to evolve. And that's part of the fun, getting to try on different versions of yourself until you find the one that fits best. Or, at least until you figure out that neon green isn't your color. And trust me on that one. And by the way, if you do feel like you've hit your final form, I'm impressed, but I also don't believe you. Life is weird and everyone gets thrown curveballs, so you may have a bit more evolving to do. So while you're figuring that out, my first piece of advice is find your safe space at Williston. And by safe space, I don't mean literal space, though it can be part of it. It's more about finding something that makes you feel like you can breathe easy, like you didn't even realize you were holding your breath before. And for some of you, that might be a specific room, like the theater, or the soccer field, or the library, or your bedroom. Or maybe it's not a room. Maybe it's a group chat with friends, or an online community where you can be your real self. For me, it was the dance studio, being with other students of color. The ancestors did not bless me with the skill of learning choreo, but I love sitting against the mirror and watching my friends dance battle each other. And another was chatting with Robin on stir fry night about what she and the dining staff cooked up that night, and laughing with friends at the self-proclaimed black and brown table. It was watching Naruto at Ford Hall and listening to indie music in Mem Hall that would make Billie Eilish cry. If you haven't found that place yet, don't worry, it exists. And for now, if your safe space is chilling in between classes in the bathroom, I'm not here to judge. We all need a break sometimes. Now, let's come back to this whole authentic self thing, the one I was trying to find on a deadline. Again, you're not going to figure it out completely right now. If you get to the end of high school and you still feel kind of lost, congratulations. You're like everyone else. But finding those places and times where you feel at ease is going to lead you towards a more genuine, self-actualized, and fulfilled version of yourself. I'll give you an example. At Williston, I thought I had to fit into a box to conform to what I thought I was supposed to be. I never thought I was enough. I wasn't smart enough, black enough, light-skinned enough, creative enough, so I changed how I talked and dressed and suppressed what made me, me. So it took me a minute to realize what genuinely excites me. One of those exciting moments was in Mr. Chu's biology class. We were all assigned to read a science fiction book, and I got Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. I brought it with me to a track meet at Westfield Academy and read the entire thing in one sitting. It was at that moment that I discovered my love for science fiction. Another moment was in Miss Clump's World Civilizations class, where we created skits to reenact the Ramayana, which made me realize how much I love learning about communities and societies outside of my own. I remember thinking that one day I wanted to find ways to bridge different cultures together, and hopefully through stories. Those moments changed everything. They made me realize that being true to myself wasn't always about seeming right to other people, but about following what felt right for me. And I know the idea of being yourself is something you've heard before, probably since you were in preschool. But I want you to hear something a little bit different this time. Adults do not automatically learn how to be themselves. Some people you know, maybe your siblings or your best friends, will force themselves to talk and dress and act a certain way so hard that they start to feel completely disconnected from how they act. They will no longer be able to discover that they love sci-fi or journalism because the story that they've made up about being someone who doesn't like those things is too loud. When you start figuring out what's authentic for you, you can start chasing the things that light you up, that make you feel alive. You'll naturally start gravitating towards opportunities that are perfect for you. And that's what's gonna make your life amazing. When I left Williston, it took a while to find those perfect opportunities. But the more I chased the things that lit me up, the more my professional and personal life started to crystallize. That interest in bridging cultures together, which I formed during World Civilizations class, sparked my desire to study abroad in college. I spent a year living in Tokyo, Japan, studying international affairs at Waseda University, and meeting people who became some of my closest friends, friends who didn't even blink an eye when I tried to get them into horror. It wasn't always easy. Being in a different country pushed me out of my comfort zone and forced me to learn quickly and reminded me that I still had so much to figure out. But those experiences abroad opened doors I hadn't even considered. They led me to a Princeton and Asia Fellowship in Nepal, where I worked on education and development programs, helping to tell the stories of communities that had long been overlooked. That desire to bridge cultures and share stories became the thread that tied my professional journey together. Whether it was reporting on race in America at WNYC, uncovering hidden histories in science at Atlas Obscura, or producing stories about love and vulnerability on the Modern Love podcast at the New York Times. Every step of the way, I was following that spark, the people or things that made me feel alive, even when I wasn't even entirely sure where it would take me. Through all of these experiences, one thing stayed the same. I was always learning. Life is about embracing the unknown, growing through it, and trusting what excites you will guide you forward. So, as you head into this new school year, remember this. It's okay to feel out of place. It's okay to be wrong about the rules of the game today. Instead of trying to hit an I know myself deadline, find your safe space. And when something gets you really excited, pay attention to that thing. High school is just one chapter in your story, and it's not about having all the answers. It's about staying curious and open to what comes next. And who knows? Maybe by the end of the year, you'll look back and laugh at what stressed you out today, like sprinting away from your mailbox. Or maybe you still won't be able to quite unlock it on the first try. And that's okay too. And if you do figure out how to navigate this whole high school thing with 0 awkward moments, let me know. I could use a few tips. Thank you.
Aaron, those wonderful words. That's your narrative thread, and I was thinking all along how it began here and continued on all the way through. I didn't get a chance to read her talk ahead of time. Actually, I did. She sent it to me. I didn't want to. I wanted to be surprised by it. So this notion of narrative threads that appeared in all the remarks we heard tonight is something that I'm latched onto, and the authenticity piece is really great to hear. So closing remarks are going to be our closing remarks. So we're going to stand, we're going to sing the alma mater. I'm going to ask Mr. Halligan to come lead us, and then the faculty will recess out, and that will conclude the ceremony. So Mr. Halligan.
Please rise and join us in the singing of the alma mater.
Thank